Welcome. The following is a short story written by Spicy, a member of Baltimore's Discord, who kindly gave me permission to read his short story for the channel. I hope you enjoy.
Weakness must be purged to make us strong enough to fight the encroaching darkness of the enemies of man.
That is what the Reclusiarch told us neophytes as we donned the black of our most holy chapter. Some may say that his words are harsh, of exaggerated severity. The weak will proclaim that our weakness makes us human. This is naive folly, for if we let weakness remain, our enemies will have a greater weapon against us than any starship, technology, or foul heretical warpcraft. As I stride the halls of the Eternal Crusader to my cell, the statues of my ancient brothers look down on me. At the end of the spinal corridor, however, stands our chapter's founder, Sigismund. He is standing vigilant with his sword in his two hands and the golden point of his blade resting on a pedestal, eyes ever vigilant against the enemies of man. I am always awestruck with his visage. He was the ideal of an Astartes, unbent and unbroken by the great heresy, taking his vengeance out amongst the stars. It is to his ideal we strive, and after his words we follow our path. No remorse, no pity, no fear. As I arrive to the bulk door to my cell, it grinds open on protesting gears. Dim light from the myriad of candles spread their warmth in my sanctum. As I remove the skull helm of my armor, a servo skull retrieves it. She was once Adelaide, a mortal serving the Eternal Crusade. As a young woman, she joined our order as a chapter serf. She toiled away in the kitchens and the armorium. She eventually took it upon herself to teach some of our adolescent neophytes from the Meyer backwater systems how to read and write. She eventually gained a venerable status, and some of my brothers who grew up under her tutelage jokingly referred to her as the Mother Superior. Me, I mostly enjoyed her skills as a regicide player, and her wit. A milky white eye stares at me from my arming chamber. That eye was once green like the lush forests, same as mine. He is my brother by lineage, not by the sacred blood of Dorn that flows through my veins. He is my reminder of weakness, for it was his weakness that ultimately led to this wretched existence, broken and reforged, stripped of what he held dearest to himself, his humanity. His once handsome features were replaced by machinery and circuits. There is a string of drool on his lip that almost reaches the gantry floor, probably the lubricant hose leaking into his mouth again. I need to take him to a tech serve to have him checked in the near future. As I approach, his eye graft turns from a dim red to a shining blue as his armor protocols activate. Cybernetically grafted arms jutting abnormally from his clavicles whir into life. The bronze Vox speaker implanted into his throat emits a raspy feedback noise and then proclaims, "Engage Armor Removal Protocol 243. The 78 recitations of the Aegis Canticle will be performed." It is still Rorik's voice, a monotone, machine-sounding parody of it, but still his voice. He has been in this state for 160 Terran years, he who held such promise only to falter and become a shadow of his former self, and ultimately to be discarded like another broken cog in a vast machine. We grew up together, my brother and I. He became my protector as we struggled to survive in the hellhole underhive on Drakian Secundus. I spent my young years being his ward until we managed to master our environment, and as he was my protector, I eventually became his. When a weapon theft against a local gang went awry, a gang whose name I cannot be bothered to recall came at us in full force, but by the Emperor's will, we held them off. The ones that we did not kill scurried away to the shadows, from which the Templars were watching and judging. We were taken in the night, and from that day we were sworn to the crusading sons of Dorn. We both survived to the rank of neophyte. The first gene seed was introduced to us, and we grew in might and stature. As neophytes we served under Marshal Nolda's crusade, where we slew the Xenos and the heretic on many worlds, our fury and our zeal unwavering. His fall came during the purging of the hive city known as Cordatus Majoris. Genestealer cults had infested the hive, and our crusade answered the beleaguered guard's contingent's call for aid. When we arrived from the skies, the spires of the city were consumed by smoke, fire, and the screams of Imperial citizens. The lower parts of the hive had been completely overrun by the Xeno filth, the abominations running freely out in the streets, the guard pressed on all fronts in ambushes and close quarters fighting. Lucky for them, close quarters are our specialty. Drop pods and thunderhawks descended on wings of fire as we slammed into the ranks of the Genestealers in the upper hive sprawl. We began to push them back. The Xenos tried their cowardly tactics on us to no avail. We have faced their kind before. Their tricks do not befuddle us. With the Emperor's wrath, we cleansed them. The taint of the alien was washed away in its own blood. The war in the crown of the hive was glorious. It was not until later, when we got to the root of the heresy, out by its source, that things turned to worse. The Xenos and hybrids withdrew to the shadows, and so it became our duty to drag them screaming into the Emperor's light and carry out his will. Us neophytes formed independent squads, whilst our initiates and sword brethren led squads of guardsmen into the darkness of the Underhive. Rorik became our squad leader. His tactical acumen was keen, and his skill with a blade even more so. The Xenos blended with the population, hid themselves in plain sight, spreading their infection to otherwise loyal subjects to the throne of Terra. Our orders were to kill everyone indiscriminately. The damp air in the lower hive was thick with the alien screaming of Genestealers, promethium fumes, and ozone from lasguns. Our search for the brood patriarch, the source of the taint, led us further and further down into the darkness. Hundreds, we killed, 1,000 perhaps. We rooted them out of their warrens and hiding places all the same. And for each one I ended, my hatred for them grew from simmering heat to a storm of fire. The mere thought of them boils my blood. Rorik and my squad followed a trail of the Xenos to an abandoned manufactorum. When we burst down the door, we noticed that the factorum was occupied by hundreds of mortals, men, women, children, all emaciated and starving. They pleaded for their lives, and, against his better judgment and my warnings, he decided to spare them. I defied his order then. I grabbed his flamer and turned the weapon on the crowd. My brother's horrified look turned into panic when the screams of the civilians turned from a wail to a high-pitched, piercing alien shriek. From the woman who had pleaded for mercy, her jaw ripped open, showing fangs dripping with a sickly blue venom. Claws spurted from hands, and with hisses and curses, they descended on us. They had nowhere to run except through us, and they came with the force of a hurricane. We closed our ranks and fired at the incoming horde. The fire and bolter took their toll on their front ranks of hybrids, but the abominations behind them scuttle and scurry over the corpses of their kin. As the wave of Genestealers met us, we in unison drew our blades. The smell of promethium and seared flesh changed to the pugnacious stench of Xeno blood. Gawain was the first to fall, the talons of mutant child through his skull, the little abomination hissing, and the aspiring Astartes went down. Baston was the next one to fall, his arm severed by the elbow. As the Xenos piled on him, he drew a crack grenade and primed it. With a wet thud, he ended his service to the Empire in a shower of alien gore. Theron became a blur of blades as he, whilst wielding dual knives, cut a swath through our prey, but soon enough disappeared in the mass of Xenos. Myself and Rorik were the last of our squad standing, him with a bolter in his left hand and a blade in the other, firing point blank into the oncoming Xenos, and the ones who came close enough he met with a cold, determined steel. I, as always, stood to his back, firing the burning promethium in a demicircle around us. My flamer's tank soon emptied, and the aliens capitalized on this reprieve. They closed in, and I had to use my flamer as an improvised weapon, and with a prayer to the Emperor, with zeal unmatched to that day, I swung the flamer like a simian would use a club. In my rage, I was blind to what befell my brother. As I grabbed one of the Xenos scything arms and tore it from his body, I heard Rorik scream in agony. I saw him there on the ground, with a grey-cloaked hybrid looming over him, raising an auto pistol to my brother. I heard a voice calling out, "For Sigismund! For Terra! For the Imperium!" Without any control of my body, I charged this parody of a man, realizing that the war cry came from my own lips, not from an hitherto unseen brother engaged in melee. I barreled into the figure, jabbing the bladed limb I had taken from his kin up under his jawline and through the top of his head. With a gurgling noise, he fell to his feet. The horde had now been culled down to a few dozen. They moved away from me, creating a void a few meters in width. I bent down and grabbed my brother in his carapace and dragged him to the doorway. The Xenos watched with scorn as I took his bolter and blade, placing myself in their only route to the sprawling streets of the hive. I took a fresh magazine and slid it into the ammo feeder as I said to them, "Too long have you pathetic souls scurried in the dark, tainting this blessed realm of the Emperor. He sent me to be your judgment for your folly. Come now, unbelievers, and I will show you the Emperor's mercy to the traitors of mankind." The fighting after that was short and brutal. Those that managed to evade my bolter instead met their end at my blade. By the Emperor's grace, both Rorik and Theron survived. Rorik spent 5 days in the Apothecarian, whilst Theron had a cybernetic graft to his right side, his already dour countenance amplified with a jaw of adamantium. Rorik's failure to his duty needed to be reprimanded, and so in chains he was taken before the Reclusiarch, Grimaldus himself. The penitentarum was silent as the grave as he was dragged to the feet of our august Reclusiarch.
Rorik, by thought and by deed you have been faced with the accusation of dereliction in your duty to eradicate the enemies of man. What say you to this inquiry?
The Reclusiarch said, his booming voice ringing through the chamber. Silence was the response from my brother who, in shame, could not take his eyes from the floor.
As witness to your crime, your brothers Theron and Baldwin have proclaimed your guilt in disobeying orders and granting mercy to Xenos guised as men condemned to death, thus endangering your battle brothers and the Imperium.
The mention of my name brings me back to the darkness and the screams.
Your brother Baldwin proved his seal and saw through the ruse of the Xenos. If it weren't for him, the Xenos taint would remain and eventually become a canker to an otherwise pacified world. A taint that could consume the entire sector in war and misery yet again.
What I did for humanity, my brother yelled out.
For humanity, eh? Humanity is frail. Humanity is weak. The luxury of humanity is denied to us Astartes. Compassion is a weakness that the crusading sons of Dawn cannot afford. You will find no place in this brotherhood, but yet you will serve. Your mind will be broken and your flesh reforged. The weakness of your mind will be stripped from your body and be replaced by the cold embrace of the machine. Baldwin?
A cold feeling runs through my body like a flash freeze. Yes, Reclusiarch. I answer before my mind even comprehends the instantaneous reaction to him calling my name.
Your faith and your seal have been proven to us. Your hatred for the enemies of the Imperium burns like a shining beacon to your brethren. Your ascension to the rank of initiate has been approved. The final implantation of your gene seed will proceed in earnest. I will personally take a great interest in your development as you become one amongst the Brotherhood of Sigismund. You will do the Emperor proud, this I am sure of.
Thank you, my Lord Reclusiarch. I will do my best to perform my duty to the throne, I reply, awestruck with the honor given to me, masking my excitement to the best of my ability.
Good,
the Reclusiarch proclaimed.
Now leave this dour hall. Look to your war gear. It will be passed to another aspiring warrior seeking to join our ranks. I have to oversee your brother's fate.
I wish to stay, I said to the Reclusiarch. We grew up together. His failure is my failure. To leave him in his last moment would be dishonorable.
If it is your wish, you may stay, Brother Baldwin.
The Reclusiarch uttered. All the while Rorik stared at me with utter contempt. I saw him screaming on a slab of cold metal as the Forgemaster Hephaeston's mechadendrites began the gruesome transformation. As the drill bore through Rorik's head, severing the neural threads in his cortex, he finally became silent.
Armor sanctification rites complete.
Rorik's mechanical voice calls me back to the moment.
Initiating Terminator warplate storage sanctification protocols. Omnissiah be praised.
Thank you, brother, I say to Rorik, only to be met by silence from my brother as he proceeds to store my armor, chanting prayers to his machine god, my courtesy passing him unnoticed. He does, however, fulfill a very important purpose to me. Except for assisting me in the service of my armor, he is also a living reminder to the price of humanity, and after all, he is my brother.